All right, everyone, welcome to the Real Estate Game Changers Show. I'm your host, Mike McKay, based in the Jacksonville, Florida market. And each and every week, we do this show with people who are changing the game of real estate all over the country. And this is a live show, guys. So if you have any questions, please put them in the comments for our guests to answer. Um, for anyone in the Jacksonville area, if you're thinking about getting into real estate or maybe you're already in it, we are hiring salespeople to go out and help us buy some houses. So if you're interested in that, just send me a DM on Instagram and we can talk about it. And this week on the show, we have Cameron Moore out of Central Florida. Cameron, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. How's it going, guys?
Absolutely, man. So for people who don't know you, you want to tell us a little bit about how you got involved in real estate and how that's led you to where you are today?
Sure. So currently, right now, I am in the Central Florida market. We do some fix and flipping, some wholesaling, kind of a mix of everything. I got started, I've been in it for about 3 years now. I got started when I was pretty much in school, my senior year, kind of like finishing up. So I graduated in 2021, and I was going to be a doctor. So I was going to go to med school. But decided at the last minute there that I did not want to do that.
Hmm,
So I started dipping my toes into real estate and kind of just have been running with it ever since. So that's kind of where we're at now.
cool. And we were talking a little bit offline of that, at one point you guys had kind of scaled up your flipping operation. I think you said you were doing 15 in 1 month or something, and there were some learnings along the way there. You want to share maybe some of those for people who are thinking about scaling a flipping operation?
Sure, sure. So in 2023, so yeah, we're in 24 now. So last year, summertime, we got to the point where we were getting a little trigger happy, right? We had a couple deals go well, starting to feel good about things, started to get some opportunities that came through us, from referrals. So we're getting a lot of referral deals, with realtors, things of that nature, people sending me deals. And I just bought everything that I laid my eyes on. I'm like, okay, yeah, it's going to work some way, shape, or form. So we pretty much bought 15 in a month, and we were in no way, shape, or form prepared for that, right? I mean,
Mm,
we're talking, I had two crews that I like knew and trust. At that time, we now are down honestly to one, but it's just we literally slammed ourselves with so many things that like I wasn't prepared for.
mm,
I wasn't, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. And a lot of these weren't just like cosmetic flips either. Some of these were 120, $150,000 flips, so it's like down to the studs, and that takes
mm,
time. That takes time, takes a lot of money. That
mm,
was a big thing as well. So like capital, having cash on hand, being able to like, float that operation, I just wasn't prepared for. Of course, I didn't do the numbers. I didn't run the numbers of like, oh yeah, you need to have X amount of money just to do those flips,
mm,
with interest payments and things of that nature. So it was just a very rude awakening. And we've obviously scaled back on the flipping side since. So we're a little bit more wholesale now. But that was summer of last year. I still to this day have a few of those flips. So learning the
mm.
hard, yeah, learning the hard way.
Are you still working on them, or you made them rentals?
One of them, two of them we're going to keep. A couple of them I'm selling at a loss, or some couple of them I sold at a loss. I still have a few more that I'll probably sell at a loss. So like, I think maybe four of them we'll take a loss
Yeah,
on. But at this point, I'm like, dude, I just want to be done. I want to be done.
yeah. I mean,
So
did you make money on the other 11 though, or?
yeah, yeah, we did. I mean, some were small. So we had a couple of big pops, so it all comes out in the wash. But
Yeah.
it was brutal, man. It was brutal. It was holding on to these. The biggest thing was like the time that we took, mentally dealing with these. So like I couldn't
Mm,
focus on continuing to build, the acquisition, sales, marketing side, like the actual company in and of itself. I was just dealing with these like problem children that we had in our company
mm,
for quite a long time, and so that took up a lot of mental bandwidth for sure.
sure. Um, how many a month were you guys flipping before you decided to do 15 at once?
Yeah, so I would say three to five, right? And it's like we're in and out, in and out, in and out. And then obviously, like a big thing was always acquisitions issue, right? Like getting the amount of
Mm,
deals. So we weren't doing a ton of direct to seller marketing at the time. So we
oh,
partnered with
okay.
realtors. Yeah, we partnered with a lot of realtors um, to get those deals. I bought like a few from referrals from social media, actually, funny enough, and
Mm,
then we pretty much did a lot of partnering with realtors. And then there was a few like we obviously have always done direct to seller marketing, but I was only spending $10,000 a month or so, which sounds like a lot. It is a lot. We're quite a bit past that now. So I say only, but it is a lot of money. But at that time, compared to where we're at now, it wasn't much. So, I could only
mm,
expect maybe two deals from that.
mhm.
So kind of just everything hit at once, essentially.
Yeah. And so, after that, you kind of decided that you're going to be about, I think you said about 80% wholesale. Is that kind of where you guys are sticking or?
Yeah, so now current day, that took a couple months to transpire, right? We kind of
Mm,
flipped to that. So we were heavy flips for the summer. Obviously, we got our hands full with those. And then I decided that in order to get kind of where I want to go, that the fix and flip model, primarily wasn't for me. I'm still doing them to this day, but we're talking like maybe 1 to 2 a month versus
mm,
with the other 5 to 6 being wholesales. And
mm,
so that operation is a lot easier, in my opinion, to scale when you're wholesaling, obviously, because you're a sales and marketing company. And so we started to prioritize our efforts on just acquisition dispo, right? So assigning those as opposed to taking them down because there's two different companies, honestly, in a sense, when you're doing fix and flips. Like you have the sales and marketing acquisition, but then you also have the flipping, and
yep.
those are two different things, right? And so I wanted to just get really good at one of them and just be able to
Mm,
prioritize one of them. And so yeah, today we're pretty much 80% wholesale slash innovation.
mm.
The other 20% I'll buy.
So, like, what did you kind of change?
Mhm.
Like when you decided to get away from like just being like a fix and flip company and decided to be like a really wholesale or off seller, off market acquisitions company.
Sure. So yeah, systems and processes were big. And then exactly that. It's like you got to get really good at marketing. You got to get really good at sales.
Mm,
So we upped our marketing quite a bit. I mean, we're to the point, we're spending around 35, $40,000 a month now in direct seller marketing. So, we have a decent operation there, obviously. So, getting good deals and how to find those consistently.
mm,
We don't do as much outbound marketing as we did, right? So, like a year ago, I was doing a lot of texting, a lot of cold
mm,
calling, which in return requires a lot of management, with teams of, VAs and things of that nature. But still, there's a lot of more sifting through leads
mm,
that you have to do versus now we are primarily just inbound. So a lot of
mm.
PPC, a lot of direct mail, and just learning how to consistently track our numbers and be consistent in those processes to get 2 to 3 contracts a week.
Yeah.
Um, that's like the biggest thing. So just really getting good and dialed in at our numbers. That changed my business, honestly. Like we did that Q3, Q4 last year, and it was a game changer.
Like what particular numbers did you guys get dialed in?
Yeah, so we didn't honestly. I ran a lot based off feel
Mm,
for a while ago, at the beginning, a year ago, and now we're pretty much running numbers for everything. So it's like, okay, what's the cost per lead? What's the cost per contract? How many
mm,
offers, does it take to get a contract? How many appointments do we need to go on? So like our team knows exactly what they're responsible for, and then
mm,
if they're off base on something, it's like, okay, we can at least pinpoint what the problem is. Versus a year ago, I would say some things like, "Oh, I don't feel like that's working. I feel like this is working." It's like, well,
mm,
we have no data to support that.
mhm.
So now at least we can actually look at the numbers and be, okay, yes, this is working, this isn't working, so on and so forth.
Are you tracking that down to the marketing channel level?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we track. We in the past, especially this quarter, but last quarter as well. We try to track everything. Like
Mm,
truthfully, I'm trying to get to the point where I know every number in our company. Uh, and just get really good with the data. But yeah,
mm,
we know what it costs per lead consistently, what it costs per appointment, contract, so on and so forth, closing, things of that nature, so that I'm
yeah.
able to see trends, and then also take that information and make decisions based on that.
What's your target cost per contract
Yeah, so
for marketing?
we try to get to around $5,000, five to six
Okay.
thousand dollars.
Mm,
We're inbound, right? So like that may be a little bit
mhm,
more expensive, but I
yeah.
know our average deal size is around $33,000, so it's like I'm okay with that all day long.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, like I said, we do a lot of PPC, so pay per click, a lot of Google stuff.
Mm,
So I know it takes us about 13 leads right now to get a contract, which is good. I'm happy
mhm,
with that. And then it's ebbs and flows too, right? So like having that data to see when something's not working, see when something's not performing. For example, last Q3 of last year, we were absolutely killing it with a pay per lead service. So we were doing a lot of pay per lead,
mhm,
uh, where you just obviously just pay for the lead in and of itself. We were crushing it. We're getting about a 10x return, and then as soon as Q4 hit, it was crazy. We hit some like $75,000 deals here, $50,000 deals there. It was solid. And then Q4 hit, and it just almost like overnight, just pretty much just
mm,
dropped off. So just some changes like that, being able to track the numbers, track the data. We made switches pretty quickly
mm.
because I knew what to expect and I knew how to track that at that point. So right now, yeah, we're just big PPC, big direct mail people.
And then are you hire that PPC out to like an agency, or is that something you guys actually manage in-house?
For sure. I'm hiring all that out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was a mistake I made at the beginning too, right? I try to do everything myself. And
Yeah.
like I'm not a Google PPC expert, right? That's not my area of expertise. That's not, up my alley. So now I pay for that 100%. So we have people that manage it for us.
I've had a couple people on the show who talked about PPC, and they say a lot of it's about like kind of working very closely with that agency to make sure that like I don't we don't do PPC, so I can't talk about the details of it. Just to make sure that like I guess they're hitting the right keywords and other things like that. Like, how closely do you guys work with your agency? And like, are you giving them like feedback, or I'm just curious how that all works.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll say this. I don't know Google PPC in and of itself very well. So like that's not my area of
Mm,
expertise. What I do know though is like I know the numbers and I know the data. So like I know the
hmm
industry averages. I talk to people consistently. Like I know what I'm looking to hit data wise.
hmm
Or like numbers wise, excuse me. So
hmm
if I'm not hitting those, I'm going to them and I'm saying, okay, what's going on here? Right. I may not
hmm
know what keywords you're targeting or what our bids are, this, that, and the other, but it's like, I mean, I'm looking at it. I don't know how to recommend something to them, but I
hmm
can say like, okay, this is off because I have other data from like people that I talk to or what I've seen in the past that can state otherwise. So that's kind of like
Yeah.
how I operate. I just try to know what I'm getting myself into, know what to expect.
Mm,
If I know it cost me $6,000 to get a closed deal or whatever the case may be, like I'm not going to go cry if I only get, 3 deals a month if I'm only spending $18,000. So it's like having those proper
mm,
expectations, even if it means I'm spending $700 a lead, whatever the case is. I just try to look at it from like a macro perspective. If I'm hitting my numbers, if I'm getting a return, then cool, that works.
what's like the main maybe one or two metrics that you're looking at, and then saying, hey, there might be a problem with here. I need to go talk to the PPC agency.
Sure. So I try to look, I'm a big kind of volume guy based on like how much we spend. So like I know, we're spending somewhere in the realm of 700, $800 a day, whatever it is, right?
hmm
So it's like I know based on that, like for our guys, I should at least have some deal flow or excuse me, lead flow of,
hmm
like 2 deals or 2 leads, right? Whatever the
per
case may be.
per day or
Per day,
per
one
day?
to two, right? And that may be
Okay.
kind of expensive, maybe off, but it's like if I start to see that we're not having as many appointments set from PPC, that's
Mm,
something I kind of raise a flag on. And then based on that, I mean that's a big thing right there. And then obviously we do like a quality control as well. So it's like what is the reason that they may not be a quality lead or an opportunity, right? And so then that can kind of
mm,
change what keywords or what campaigns they're running. But mostly for me, it's cost per lead, and then at the end of the day, cost per like contract with PPC. So I just kind of try to track those things because if I know if I'm getting less leads but I'm getting more contracts, I'm okay with spending more for that. So
yeah.
it's trying to just look at it from a macro perspective and then having an understanding of what are some averages, what are things that are working well for me. If I'm hitting an ROI,
Yeah.
cool, that works.
And how are you like managing that kind of numbers further down the funnel, in the sense of like sometimes it's, what if the sales guy screws up on your team,
Yeah,
right? Like that it could be a great lead and like he makes a mistake.
exactly. So that's a big thing too, right? It's like knowing where in the funnel you're messing up, or could improve, I should say, because
Yeah.
you may be, you may want to jump the gun and blame PPC for poor leads when at the end of the day it's like it's your lead management is not contacting them within 60 seconds or whatever the case is, right? So it's like
Mm,
having the whole funnel tracking KPIs is really important for us, and that way we can see if there's a drop off anywhere. I can at least
mm,
look further into that. So like for us, right, a couple things. Well, like when a lead comes in, we want to get to it within 60 seconds. As we're filming this, we just got one in, so our team better get on that. So it's yeah, it's 60 seconds. We want to get on the phones because these people are on the. This is specifically for PPC, but they're
yeah.
on on the web, going from like form to form, right? They're going from website to website. They want to just you need to interrupt that pattern interrupt. So
Mm,
we want to call them as soon as possible, right? Within 60 seconds, that's our goal. And then from there, obviously have the conversation, try to qualify them, try to set an appointment. Um, if we're not setting as many appointments in a week, right, I may look and be like, okay, what are our conversations on the lead management side looking like?
mm,
If we are hitting appointments, if appointments are being set, and then our acquisition guys are going out there, and then obviously they're not closing, It's okay, cool. Is that an acquisition problem? Is that a lead? Is that a lead problem with the appointments that are being set? Like quality of appointment? I don't know, right? So it's like that's where we start
Mm,
looking. At least I know where to look, right?
yeah,
So those are the things that we look to track along the way.
yeah. And then you guys are doing pretty much all inbound. So I'm curious what your qualification criteria is to go actually out to a property and meet someone.
Yeah, so I'll touch on that too. We're in person, so some people do
Mhm.
virtual appointments, over the phone. I am in person, so that what that means is we're going out to their house, right, for the appointment. Some people don't like that. Some people do like that. I'm not sure. I just have always done in person, and it's something I feel confident in. I feel like first and foremost, if there's a guy that's going to do it virtually versus me in person, like I feel with great confidence that I will get that deal over them.
Mhm.
We've seen that time and time again, so it works for us, right? And I'm only doing it in Central Florida market, so our radius isn't terribly, big. So what do we do typically is they need to have some sort of motivation, essentially, one of the four pillars, where essentially they want to take action. Like that's a big thing. First and foremost, like, they want to move forward, and they want to sell their house. So like if we get to that point, we try not to overqualify. I'll be honest with you. So like if
Mm,
we get to the point where our team knows like we have a little bit of obviously we have talk tracks and we have scripts and things of that nature, but like if they're ready to move forward and make a decision, that's pretty much the biggest thing for us because
mm,
I can't tell you how many times that people have said, "Oh, I want $400,000," and we've gotten it at 120 or whatever the case is, right? So it's like numbers mean nothing to us. What's the situation? Is there some motivation there, and are they ready to make a decision? If they have that, we're going out there every time
yeah,
because that's a big way. Obviously, that's how we get deals.
yeah. What are some of your talk tracks to figure out if they're actually ready to make a decision?
Sure, sure. So first and foremost, like whenever we have a lead come in, first and foremost, like the first thing we ask is like, okay, what has you looking to sell? From
Mm,
there, typically, like you're gonna get almost all the stuff you need, right? Okay, oh well, I'm moving. It's like, okay, when are you looking to move, right? So like it's very specific on each individual
mm,
like person's like case or whatever they have going on, as opposed. I mean, obviously, sometimes we ask like, how soon are you looking to sell?
mm,
That's just like a kind of a basic question, and then they'll be like, "Oh, well, I could sell in 60 days. 6 months, 3 months doesn't really matter." If I hear that, there's not a lot of urgency there, as opposed to the sometimes most of the times the deals we get are, man, I got to sell within 30 days. I got to sell like as soon as possible, right? So things like
mm,
that, like urgency.
yeah,
So just asking them the timeline. If they have a timeline and they know it, then obviously they're ready to make a decision. So that's one of the ways. So just what's the motivation? What's are you ready to move forward? So what's your timeline looking like? Do you have a plan for what you're going to do after you sell? Things of that nature.
yeah. What does your sales team look like to handle that lead flow and go out to appointments?
Sure. So lead manager, two acquisitions now, and then we have a dispo.
Okay,
So leads come in, and then we try to do 6 appointments each acquisition wise for the
per
week
week, per
per
week.
week.
Okay.
Yeah. So where we cover in Central Florida, like it's we try to go within like obviously an hour of the office. We're located here in Lake Mary, so like an hour each way. But like if
Mm,
the lead's decent, if we know there's motivation, we'll go a little bit further. Um, so in and of that, ideally we're hitting 2 a day for each guy, but that doesn't happen. So like we try to go to 6 attended appointments. 8 will be booked, but 6 will be attended
mhm,
because there's some sort of no show typically.
mhm.
Uh, so that's kind of like the goals we hit, and then from there we should be getting 2 to 3 contracts a month or a week, excuse me.
Gotcha. And you said was is one person handling lead management there?
Yeah,
Yeah. Are acquisitions guys also allowed to jump in on that lead management, or that's solely a?
yeah, yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. They're allowed to take the PPC leads inbound if need be if we're getting a little slammed. Um,
Mm,
I prefer that honestly. Like so, with specifically for PPC things of that nature with high intent.
mhm,
Prefer it to be our acquisition people, actually. Other lead sources, with direct mail, when there's a little higher volume, things of that nature, you can have, just normal lead management. But with higher intent things like PPC, I prefer acquisition people to be taking those.
Is the lead management in office for you, or is that a remote position?
Yeah, in office.
Office, yeah.
Yeah.
Talk to me about just building out that sales team. 'Cause that's something we've
Yeah.
been doing, and I find it super interesting.
Yeah, it's been a learning process. So whenever I first hired my first salesperson, I I had done the sales and acquisitions myself, so like I was confident in it. I knew what worked for me, and I knew like okay, it was a lot. It was one of those like that's just what you do kind of thing. It's like okay, like how do you not know how to do that when I first hired somebody? So like it was tough because I didn't have like training. I didn't have training or documented processes to be able to be like okay, here's the recipe, right? So that's a big thing. It's like truthfully having frameworks that work well for like what does an appointment look like? What does a
Hmm.
talk track look like? We have scripts, but I'm a much bigger fan of just having like frames to follow as opposed to just say this word verbatim or say this paragraph verbatim because then you start sounding robotic. Things like there's waves, with conversations like things go all over the place. So
Hmm.
I want people to be flexible, but at the same time, like they have like frames to follow. So we train people on Sandler, which is the
Huh.
stuff Steve Trang and all those guys, John Martinez, all that stuff. We do that.
Yep.
Um, so they're all the same, and they have here's your upfront contract. Here's digging for motivation, things of that nature, right? So we try to really have a good frame for how the appointments work, but to build the team right, it's just constant training.
Hmm.
It's constant like feedback on each and every appointment, trying to make sure that like, okay, what went wrong, what went well. Training is a big thing, like consistently. Like when you think that they're good, it's like still train.
Hmm.
And then having proper expectations too, with like, okay, these are your numbers, like these are like non-negotiables. If we don't hit them, like why, and then making sure that I understand what they want to accomplish as well. That was a big thing. I would force
Hmm.
my wants and desires into them, but like truthfully trying to get down to the point. It's like, okay, how much money do you want to make? Why do you want to make that kind of money? Like,
Hmm.
because it's easier to be like, okay, what do I need to do as a leader to, help you get to that number, right? It's a different frame. It's a different way to approach it as opposed to, like, dude, you didn't hit your numbers. What the heck's going on, right? Um, so that was on me. That was more leadership stuff, but which I'm constantly trying to work on. I'm nowhere near the best, far from. I'm still trying to get better, but that was a big thing that changed and helped. And then knowing too, like I'll still go on some myself as well. I'll still go on them as well if we need to. So like knowing that I'm in the trenches with them, I think that may help so I can kind of see things. But trying to grow and have something that's repeatable has been helpful in building that.
Yeah. What about when you're in the hiring stage? Like what does your hiring process look like?
Sure. So top of funnel, I mean, we try to do a lot of stuff, wise hire, referrals. I'd prefer referrals if we're being honest.
Hmm.
Um, from others. So we try to make sure, obviously, that they take a personality test and that they're fit for that position. So
Is that
there's
like a PI or what are you having them do?
yeah, we do PI.
Right.
So then from there, if they're fit there, like that's the first scrub, and then obviously we try to see, okay, cool, like what experience do you have, and then it depends on the role, right? So it depends on the role greatly, like kind of how we go about it, but from there, if we once we hire them, once they make it through that process, we have a 30, 60, 90 days in regards to like there's game plans for 30, 60, 90. Beginning there's training, onboarding, things of that nature, and then there's expectations to hit in the 30, 60, 90.
Mm.
And then we just make that really clear. So onboarding's gotten a lot better because we have everything documented. So for
Mm.
each role, okay, here's what to expect, here's the training, here's this, here's how we do things. Then we kind of bring them on board. They'll see some ride-alongs or some shadowing. There's some shadowing that's going on, and then
Yeah.
from there, we have expectations for what they should hit numbers wise on those 36 to 90 days.
Yeah. And what about particularly for hiring acquisitions people? Like what are you looking for in terms of like a profile on PI?
Yeah, so I myself, obviously I'm a maverick, so like there's something in and of itself there, right? I mean, as all probably entrepreneurs are, and any sort of like leadership role is there. Um, It's been really interesting. I was having this conversation the other day too because I was talking to a couple of my buddies who have seen success from things that aren't in acquisition roles specifically that aren't just associated with what like the profile should be. So
Mm.
there's no like heavy driving kind of like ability there. There may be a little bit more like soft skills that are hard to kind of like track and see. But I don't know. I have kind of faded away a little bit, if we're being honest with you, kind of diving deeper from judging so strictly based off of PI, to be honest
Mm.
with you, because as a base level, right, if they hit the things that we want in regards to, depends on the test you're looking for. Um, but it kind of just differs because I haven't. We have two guys now, and
Mm.
one of them started as a lead manager, in my opinion, like the type of personality that's in a lead manager versus acquisitions is going to be a little bit different as well. So like what
Mm.
works there doesn't really work the best
Talk
for maybe acquisitions.
talk about what do you think that is, the difference that you're looking for.
Sure. So, from what I'm seeing, and this is a learning process, right? So like these are things where I talk about on a day-to-day basis because I have not figured it out to the best, honestly, like the best yet. I'm trying to figure it out for myself. So it's good to talk through and see because this is like what I'm thinking about day by day. Um, with lead management specifically, I think there needs to be a little bit more patience as opposed to like with acquisitions. The guys that performed well for us kind of have that like, I'm going to go out and get it done kind of attitude and can be a little bit more pushy, can be a little bit more of a driver in a sense. But it's just the way in which they can approach things, I guess, with kind of just having kind of a balance between, okay, when do I push, when do I pivot in regards to, with the person on lead management. I think there needs to be a little bit more patience because oftentimes
Mm.
with our guys, they can be on the phone for 30 minutes, right? Before you kind of get really any information or build that relationship. So acquisitions guys don't have the patience sometimes to do that and just sit there and kind of chat and, kind of just, be sociable in that aspect. Um, they're a little bit more driving in a sense to where it's like, okay, listen, we just signed the contract kind of thing. So I don't know. It's just something that I've observed. I need to try to like see and test in myself, but we still don't have like where, we the two guys we have now are a little bit newer. So we
Mm.
still have some time to go. So I'm trying to like observe there. But the guys in the work that didn't work as well in the past, it's on me. So I don't really have a ton of data that can say like, hey, this is working like really well. This is kind of like a new thing for me because there's nobody that's absolutely crushing it, right? It's like
Mm.
nobody's just absolutely killing it. So like I don't want to be here and be like, yeah, you should go for this or you shouldn't go for this because I
Mm.
still feel like I haven't gotten it figured out myself, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that may be a lot more on the leadership side as well. So I don't want to say that it's a personality issue when their leader, it could be the one that needs a lot of improvement. So I'm not sure. It's a day by day thing.
Fair enough. What about the interview process? What does that look like for a salesperson?
Yeah, so we have someone, a VA on my team, that will kind of scrape through all the applicants, and then the first thing that we ask for is a 60-second video of
Okay.
them talking why I think they'd be a good fit for the job. From that, it served me very well, just because I can honestly like I can see how you communicate. You can kind of learn a lot from somebody just from a 60-second like just video of them talking. So that has served me quite well. At least that kind of helps the filter. And then what we'll do is we'll set up a 15-minute phone interview. And then from there, if it makes sense, we'll have them come to the office. And then after that, we'll probably have one more sit down. And then after that, I should be able to make a decision. So we kind of have a little bit of a filter. But the biggest thing, right, is top of funnel. That 60-second video has served me very well because I would
Mm.
try to talk to everybody. No, dude, it's just waste my time. No
Awesome.
offense to them, right? But it's like you got to be fit to some degree. So
Yeah. Gotcha. And you were saying, Sid, that you guys do a lot of Sandler training. We've done a lot of that over the years. I'm curious if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
yeah, yeah. So Sandler training. Essentially, so when I got started, knew some guys. It was like from the home investors model. So the home investors model, franchise model. I'm not sure if you're familiar with home investors.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
they train off of Sandler, right? And so David Sandler, he was a sales guy, great sales guy, and he kind of has this like framework that we teach about, and we kind of train. And to preface this as well, all of the guys you see today, the Steve Trangs, the John Martinez's, I was talking about a little bit about earlier, they go based pretty much off of Sandler, right? So essentially, it talks about having a framework of when you go into appointment, how to structure those conversations. So with, at the beginning, you go through an upfront contract. Essentially what that is you're letting them know, okay, what's going to happen today, right? What does that look like? So we're going to be in here for 45 minutes to an hour. We're going to ask you some tough questions. We're going to see if this property is a fit for us. It may not be a fit. You're going to be okay with that. Pretty much just letting them know exactly what's going to happen,
Mm.
and you're diving into some motivation. Um, and then obviously there's a few things you need to dive deep into there. What's the timeline? Who are the decision makers? You start to wrap things up, and then we go back to our car. We talk to the finance team. You see, send it in for underwriting, and then we come back in with an offer, and we try to get it signed then and there. So like that whole frame that I just described is pretty much based off of Sandler.
Mm.
And so when you hear us say Sandler, that's kind of like the techniques in which we train. And then we dive deep into situations. Obviously, like that's more of the training today, right?
Mhm.
It's like situational stuff. So if
Yeah.
X, how do you proceed?
Is that like kind of role play that you guys ever training, or what's your main method?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Role playing. Because at the end of the day, like once you know the frame, it
Hmm.
should be pretty similar. It's just how do you deal with individual situations that arise? Because stuff can come out of all over the place. So who knows? How do you stay on your toes and be able to address it?
Yeah. So, I know a lot of times, kind of back to the PPC thing, people have said like, you kind of got to go to a certain like wider area with PPC to make it cost effective, but you seem to have done fairly well with it and, kind of sticking to the Central Florida region. Like, I guess, what's your opinion on what people say on that?
Yeah, so I think there's two schools of thought there. I see guys that do it virtually all
Mm,
across the nation, right? It may not be in every state, but like their whole goal is let me get as few lowest cost per lead as possible. Because in Google, right, the bigger the surface area, obviously, the cheaper the lead because you have a
mm,
higher volume and you have a higher umbrella in which you're looking to get leads across. My problem with that, the reason I'm okay with paying a little bit more per lead is just because I know my market well, and I feel like we can execute better than maybe just
mm,
going early, right? So it's like if I got a lead in Kansas,
yeah,
I'd have to just send it to a buddy because I don't know how to, operate as well there. I don't know the market. I don't feel like I have an advantage there. So I'm okay with paying more in that sense, just because we know when operate in the Central Florida market. So I feel very confident in it. Not to mention we also do in-person appointments, so there's that as
mm,
well. So I think it just kind of comes down to the fact of I have a decent enough area to where it's not just like one county. We operate pretty heavily in 5 counties. So it's
mm,
like County, Orange County, Lake, Seminole, Volusia. So kind of along I-4, which if you're not in Florida, you have no idea what I'm talking about, but Central Florida. So we operate there. And just based on having my PPC there, I can get it to where the numbers make sense for me. If I was just operating maybe in one county, I probably couldn't make it make sense just because there's not enough volume
mhm,
for it to make sense on numbers wise, right? Because you're bidding way higher and you're paying a lot more per lead just because you have such a small area. Versus if you tell Google, hey, Google, I'll take leads all over the place, right? Well, they can just send you ones that make sense, and bring your costs down. So for me, with the areas in which we have it in, it does make sense. Even though I pay more than somebody that would just say, hey, let me blanket target Florida. But it's just
yeah,
because I operate a little bit differently. I'm not virtual. So even when we're wholesaling, right, it's like I want our guys out there, like we're the ones taking pictures. We're the
mm,
ones that are like, having those conversations. Like we have people that can do walkthroughs on the dispo side that are
mm,
on the team, right? So I just feel like we're a little bit tighter and we can operate a little bit more smoothly on that sense.
yeah. Um, what do you guys do you guys find that like the people you're competing against on PPC, like if they filled out a few forms, like is anyone else going in person?
You know, so one of my really good buddies is also in this. I have a couple buddies that actually do PPC as well, so like I kind of know what they're doing as well. It's almost my biggest competition are my friends, which is kind of funny. It
Yeah.
happens a lot in business, which is kind of ironic, but it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag.
Mm,
I get ecstatic when they don't go in person because I'm just like I tell my team I'm like that's a deal for us. It's like if it's going to make sense, like I have with great confidence that we will get that deal before they will, just because we can scorch the earth. Oh my gosh, you're going to sell this house to somebody that's never seen it. Gee whiz, how do you think you're going to do that, right? Little things like that. So, but to answer your question specifically, do I see them in person as well? Not a ton, not a
mm,
ton. We're pretty quick to try to schedule appointments, right? So if a lead comes in, we want to schedule within 24 hours, ideally that day, but
mm,
next day at the latest, to be honest with you. So like we try to keep it a little bit open schedules for that, just because it's all about speed, urgency, right? And
mm,
especially with high intent, inbound stuff like that. Um, and that's changed, right? When you're doing cold calling and texting, we used to be able to just kind of consistently talk to this person and set an appointment when it made sense. And there wasn't, as much competition. And so it was a completely different operating way.
mm,
Now that we have just pretty much inbound, we have to change the way in which we deal with that as well. So we're pretty quick. We try to deal with everything with great urgency, and we're trying to get out there as quickly as possible. Like I want to beat the other guy,
mm,
because they may be talking to somebody, but hopefully they won't be talking to them if I set an appointment and get out there that day. They want to
yeah,
feel like they get taken care of, right? That's what I've come across.
mm,
Like when someone calls in, they just want to feel like they've gotten it taken care of. It's like, okay, I'm working on it at least. So it's like if they
mm,
have an appointment, if I'm on the phone with them, whatever, and they know I'm coming, they just feel like, okay, at least I have that taken care of. I don't need to go fill out 10 more forms.
Mm, yeah,
In my
for sure.
experience.
What about we haven't done any PPC, but we've done quite a bit of direct mail. Like how would you compare like dealing with like those two types of leads? Like any differences there?
Yeah, we honestly try to deal with them pretty similar now, just because that's the way
Mm,
we try to deal with every lead because it's
yeah,
inbound.
yeah.
Try to get out there as quickly as possible. Depends on the way the intent based on the direct mail is a little bit different. We send out some check mailers. Are you familiar with those? I'm sure
Yeah.
you've probably seen those too. Uh,
Yeah. Maybe.
yeah, so all of those, right?
Yes.
That's the hot stuff right now.
Yeah.
And so yeah, if somebody's interested, right, we want to get out there as soon as possible, just because we
Mm,
want to increase the chances that we're going to get that deal. Um, and I know for a fact that the sooner I get out there, the better my chances are. And if I want to either be the first person out there, or I want to be the last person out there. I don't want to be like in between, right? Because at
mm,
least first I can get it done, in one shot. If I'm last, I can scorch the earth and at least see what I'm working with. But
mhm,
I don't want to be, I'd rather be the first or fourth, not second or third, just because second or third, you're kind of just a commodity. You don't have anything to base off of. It's more so just, oh, I got another guy coming. I got another guy coming. Or this guy said this, but I got another guy coming. So it's like you can't really see what you're working with. But
mm,
we typically get deals based on being the first.
yeah.
So I want to be the person there that's going to just solve the problem, because that's what these people are looking for, is solved problems.
Yeah. What are like are you doing anything like unique with like kind of data or like any strategies on the direct mail side?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we pay for pretty good data.
Okay.
We've mixed. We've done DataFlick is the one we're using now. I'm not sure if you're
Okay.
familiar with them, but it's all AI ranked and all that fun jazz. I
Mm,
just think it comes down to consistency. So
mm,
finding like your buy box. I used to not be a buy box guy. I was just like, yeah, send me anything that makes money. But now I realize, like, especially in this market, things have changed a little bit. So I want to target specifically like median house price or below.
mm,
In Central Florida here in Orlando, that's about $400,000 or below,
mhm,
and that just increases my odds for me to be able to A, move a deal, but B, if I need to buy it, I can buy it, and I feel comfortable buying it. So other than that, like, that's kind of been the specific thing. One thing that's worked really well for us, like going back to finding deals for free, um, is the realtor side of things. So what I do
mm,
is I'll go and set up these brokerage meetings at these brokerages here in Central Florida. So essentially, what we do is I try to get on every month. Typically, brokerages have like some sort of like powwow with their team,
mhm,
and I speak at those and pretty much say, "Listen, guys, if you ever come across properties that don't make sense for you, I'd love to pay you 1% up front, and then fix it up, or get deal with the property. Whether I could wholesale. Most of the time, I tell them I'll fix it up or do some sort of wholesale action, and then I'll give them the full listing on the back end. So that has gotten me an unbelievable amount of deals, because
uh,
realtors don't look at ugly houses the same way you and I do. They look at it as almost a problem, right? They want to have a nice, shiny, perfect MLS listing, as opposed to what do I deal with this house that needs $100,000 in repairs? They're like, oh my god, I can't put that in MLS. I don't want to deal with that. So
mm,
being a solution to their problems, that's been super helpful for us if you're looking to get like free deals. So, and just trying to build relationships in that regard, because they come across, like, realtors are out there marketing as well, right? Like, they're doing all the same type of stuff. They're talking to sellers consistently. They're going on appointments consistently. I want to be the person they think of when they come across
mm.
a house they don't know what to do with. So that has served me very well. And you can even wholesale those deals if you're upfront and honest with them. They just want, once again, they want somebody to just deal with the problem. So that's something that we've done that's been quite helpful.
So you just kind of reach out to the different large brokerages in the area and set that up, or just kind of relationships over the years, or?
We just cold walk in them. I'm actually about to hire somebody
Ah,
as our relationship manager. Yeah, we literally, and I have a spreadsheet of all the brokerages, and we've gone into a
mhm,
bunch at this point. But we walk into them and try to schedule an appointment. Literally, like, we drive there, try to talk to the broker that's in charge, and we try to get on schedule an appointment. Because nobody's doing that. Like, no one's
yeah,
doing that. That's low hanging
yeah,
fruit, and you would be surprised, like, how many deals they come across that they just don't know what to do with. And then, not to mention, right? It's like, in our industry, in our business, there's very few things that like compound. And so one of the things that I try to think about for my business is, what can I build that does compound, like that compounding vehicle that
mm,
will constantly grow? Well, I want everyone to know, like, our company and our brand, right? So if those realtors consistently, talk about us and think about us, they'll bring us deals for the years to come. And so that's
Yeah.
something that I try to focus on. How can I, if I shut off marketing tomorrow, how could I still get deals? And
Mm.
so right now, I want to build like a brand here in Central Florida to where everyone knows it's like, okay, I'm going to bring my deal to him, kind of thing.
Yeah. And then like are you like offering to speak on something specific that brings value to them, or like what's kind of the what are you talking about at these things?
Yeah. So quite literally, I give a presentation about because in my opinion, I mean, the value's there, right? If a realtor comes across a house
Yeah.
that they don't know what to do with, I explain to them, I'm like, listen, if you have come across a house that isn't MLS ready, and I give a bunch of examples, there's an inherited house, or there's a tree through the living room, there's a XYZ, whatever the case is, stuff that we buy. Here's how I solve it, right? And so what that does to them is oftentimes they don't know how to deal with that. You and I think, oh my gosh, that's an easy $30,000 wholesale fee, or that's an easy fix and flip,
Yeah.
and that's a frame that I, I've broken myself, but like I try to get other people to break as well. Just because you and I think something, that doesn't necessarily mean they know how to do that as well. Same goes the flip side, right? It's like I come across so many retail listings. Maybe we do come across retail listings that we'll occasionally try to refer out and stuff like that. But that's not what I'm optimizing for. That's not my
Yeah,
focus.
yeah. Same
For
thing.
realtors,
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh my god, you don't want that?" It's like, "No, that's not what I'm optimizing for." So, same for the realtors, they're trying to get listings. They're trying to get, retail stuff that makes sense for them, those pretty houses. Oftentimes, they don't wanna deal with the ugly stuff. So, it's like they would much rather be able to call me, not have to think twice, and get paid more. Because if they listed on the MLS at, 5% and they're getting 2.5 of a $100,000 house versus if I fixed it up, they get 1% upfront versus and then 2.5 on a $200,000 house when I'm done, it's a win-win. So
Yeah.
that's the value in which we try to create and try to add is giving them another option.
Yeah. Cool. And that's yeah, you're the first person I've actually ever heard of who's doing that like in an intentional way, right?
Right.
Like like
Yeah.
going in and giving presentations, like not just calling people and kind of it's a back burner thing.
Yeah,
It's
it's funny. It's
cool.
funny because I feel like a lot of people talk about building relationships with agents now, but it's all like cold call text, and so
Yeah.
it's kind of just like okay, agent outreach, agent outreach. Well, what does that mean? And then they treat it like cold calling or texting, to where it's just a
Right.
mass numbers game. But from my experience, when these agents like see you, get to meet you, like they know who I am, it's like I've gotten deals. What will happen is you'll start to find the agents that come across those and like that perform, and you'll get multiple deals from that same agent for years to come. And
Mm.
so, like last year, from this one agent, off the top of my head, I know we did a $60,000 deal with her, super easy one. And then I think she brought us two more. So three deals from one agent from
Yeah.
one office meeting. So it's like,
Yeah.
is that worth your time? I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool, man. How many would you say that like you do on like I guess a month or an annual basis from the
Sure.
agents?
So back when I was talking about us buying a bunch of flips, we were going crazy on them. So like that's how it all
Yeah.
compounded. I would try
Okay.
to do one a week, right? But I took a break for a while. We're gonna build it back up now and just be smarter about it. I'm actually, like I said, I'm gonna hire somebody that's their sole job is gonna be a relationship management a manager, to where
Yeah.
essentially they're gonna go and keep those relationships and build those relationships with these brokerages. Um, if you can get to the point, like our goal is gonna get to the point where we do a couple a week, because there's only so many
Yeah.
brokerages, obviously, like in your area that are have an office, that are like doing business, things of that nature. So like once we knock them all out, it's just building the relationships with them and keeping the relationships afterwards.
Hmm.
So I want to just get to the point where, like, truthfully, we've spoken at every single operation, brokerage in Central Florida, and then we just try to keep the relationship with them throughout. Because all it takes, like I said, all it takes is one person sitting there. Like, what will happen oftentimes if you go to a decent sized office is I'll walk out with a deal because
Yeah.
some person sitting in the back, some realtor, and they're like, oh my god, well, 123 Main Street is that's a perfect opportunity. Here you go. And I'm like, yes, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So you'd be surprised.
And then how are you working it? Are they just kind of handing the lead to you? You're meeting with the seller and then taking it from there, or like what I guess what's your approach?
I tell them they can be as involved or as not involved as they'd like. So it's up to them. You'd be surprised.
Mm.
You'd be surprised. I have gotten some true layups. I have gotten some true layups. I've given them my price. And like, all right, they accept. And I'm like, oh, Okay, so we just spent the first half talking about like sales, systems, processes, all that, and then with these realtors, sometimes it's, hey, here's my number, see if it works. So it really just depends on what relationship they have with the seller. So
Mm,
if it's a family member or whatever the case is, I tell them like, listen, I'll be as involved or as not involved as you'd like, but a couple of caveats I give them is typically it needs to be off market. I do buy some on market stuff, but it needs
yeah.
to have like some real good motivation. Obviously, the numbers need to make sense, um, and that obviously that have some sort of communication with the seller, because what would happen when I didn't specify that is that essentially these realtors just did some driving for dollars for me. And I'm like, thank you for your effort and your time, but I don't want to go and skip trace and then cold call and do all that jazz myself. I want to actually talk with leads, like motivated sellers that you've already like pretty much pre-qualified. So the way I pitch it is, do you ever go on listing appointments that you don't know what to do with, right? So then
Mm,
that way, it's like, oh, okay, like I've already had this conversation. I already know what's going on here. Yeah, perfect. They call me up with a scenario, and then here you go.
yeah. Any other tips for people who are thinking about maybe trying something like that? Things that have worked well for you?
Sure. So, I mean, quite literally, what I do is I create a presentation, I go and speak there, and it literally is examples of what I've done with
Mm,
other builders, right? So, like, you can just, or even create an example. It doesn't really matter. Just show them like what it looks like visually.
yeah.
Here's this house. Here's what it sold for. If you brought it to me, I would have paid you X and then give you the listing on the back end. So you would make X, Y, Z as opposed
Mm,
to just this. Also, here's how easy it is. You call me, I deal with everything. Like, let's say it's a sticky deal and there's some probate and there's some liens and it's just this, that, and the other. If you call my team, I'll deal with all that. And all you get in return, and what you get in return is a pristine listing on the back end. So
mm,
it's like, it's ease, right? So just try to really show them the value that you add, and then don't be afraid like to go in person and ask, like genuinely. You'd be surprised. I've literally just cold approached some realtor offices when I was getting started, and like I set up a meeting, and I even looked like more of a freaking baby than I do now. And but I was just a young kid just going up there talking to them. A bunch of like there was like 100 people in the room that one day, like a huge brokerage. And so literally just ask, because they're like, oh my gosh, yeah. And then there's a line out the door afterwards because they're like, okay, I see the value. Um,
yeah.
and then just be really upfront and transparent with what you're going to do, just because we really try to care about like our brand.
Mm,
Want people to know that I'm going to get the deal done and also respect them. So like if you plan on doing this in wholesale, I would be very, very, very upfront and transparent with what you're trying to do at the beginning with them, just so that there isn't any, nothing gets misconstrued or anything, just because you want to be able to keep that relationship. So just be honest and transparent, but show them the value, show them
yeah.
like what you can do. And then if you build a bunch of mini lead getters for you, that compounds, right? Like the way Alex Ramosi talks about. So I'm building some lead getters.
Yeah. And then if you were going to wholesale it on the back end, and obviously you're being upfront about that, how are you compensating them in that case? Because they're not getting that back end listing, which is juice, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So I try to I work it out with them case by case. I'll be honest with you. I
Yeah.
don't wholesale a ton of them. Have I? Yes. What does
Mm,
that look like? I tell them, hey, it looks like, if you did this, you would have made approximately X, Y, or Z. If I can just do this, if I pay you X and we get this deal done, is that going to be okay? Kind of thing. I try to come up with something comparable to
yeah.
where it's, even if I have to pay them a referral fee of $7,500 or 10 grand, even sometimes, right? Like if there's juice there,
Yeah.
and I look at it like this, it's a free lead, right? So like I have no problem because that goes straight to my bottom line.
Mm,
I don't pay in marketing. I don't need to pay, extra employees, things of that nature. Like those deals go straight to my bottom line. So I'm
yeah.
willing to be creative in that sense. And just it's situational. So like I don't have a formula for that one,
Hmm.
but I would just say like, try to make something that makes sense for them as well.
Yeah.
If it's $100,000 house and you could have flipped it to 250, right? I have no problem maybe going to them and be like, listen, maybe you could have made $6,000, $7,000 when this is all said and done. I'm just gonna go ahead and give you that wholesale fee up front. Would you be okay with that? If you're making
Mm,
30K on top of that and it's a $37,000 deal, come on,
yeah. Yeah.
all day long.
Yeah. Gotcha. Um, any other unique stuff you guys are doing to kind of bring in deals?
Yeah, so that was one. I do get some deals from social media, from some people. So I mean,
Mm.
that was a big thing that always helps us. If anybody ever has a deal in Central Florida, I'd love to chat about it.
How do you get those? You're just posting about what you're doing, or like how are like
Yeah,
you're reaching
so
out, or
I don't really post a ton of like specific content in regards to like, okay, here's how to do X, Y, or Z. I more so just post like, hey, here's what we're doing,
mm,
because I'm an operator, so I'm in the business, and I kind of just try to document it more so.
mm,
I think that maybe occasionally people see that and they're like, okay, cool, like he's done this, he's done a deal over there, cool, I'll send him one over there. It's like, okay, I see he does this, like let me ask about that, and then when I come across a deal, I'll send it his way. And so
mm,
I'd love to help out in that regard. um, and then just talking with people consistently, trying to build up my network as well. That's
yeah,
been something that's worked out. But mostly, I would say, like looking back on it, the biggest things, right, are for us. It's realtors give us a good amount of business, and then obviously our marketing is the big one as well because that one's
yeah,
scalable. So it's just I try to build things that compound. At least try to find something. And for me, that was like the brand thing. So how can I build a
mm,
good brand?
yeah. And are you guys? You said you were using like DataFlick, and you said you mentioned one other like AI list provider. Like, are you guys
Yeah,
finding like more? What was that? Audantic?
back in the day, yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys finding more success with that than just kind of pulling normal lists from the county with distress, or are you?
You know, I've gone back and forth with this because I've also jumped in and out of direct mail, full transparency. So like I
Mm,
haven't, I mean, there was like years ago I would be consistent, like when I first got started. And then what would happen is I'd, jump in for 4 months, jump out for 4 months, so on and so forth. But all in all, I would say it just comes down to consistency.
mm,
Like if you're sending mail to houses that you would buy, at the end of the day, like it's consistency.
mm,
That's what I see. So it also depends on the volume, right? If you're trying to just send out 100 mailers, it's like, okay, well, maybe you'd want to be way more sniper approach to as opposed to if you're sending out 10,000, 50,000 a month.
mm,
Um, I haven't seen a huge change differential, if we're being honest, between the data.
mm,
Um, I think that more so it's just being consistent with it. It just the reason that I like it is just because it does all the filtering for me. So
mhm,
okay, cool. At least I know that they have a higher likelihood of wanting to sell. So
yeah,
it's been helpful, and I've used it for quite some time. So in comparison, I don't have an exact comparison because I've done it for a while.
yeah,
So for me, it's like, okay, that works, and this is what I'm hitting. So yeah, I should probably keep doing that.
yeah. And on direct mail, what are you guys looking at in terms of like your cost per contract?
It's pretty similar actually. I think $6,200. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
was that one pretty there? We hit a few pops there, but then also okay, that was this quarter. Last quarter, there was
Mm,
1 month where spent 1 month. We spent $15,000. I just tested something new, and literally, I don't think I got a single deal from it. Like we literally just, I
mm.
think we messed something up there. So
What was
literally.
that new thing so that I don't do it?
Yeah. So it was a new provider. I don't want to trash them because it could have been
Okay,
me.
don't say the name.
Yeah,
That's
it
fine.
was a new
Yeah.
provider. Yeah, it was a new
Okay.
provider. So it was all on me. At the end of the day, it's my fault. But that provider didn't work out too well for us. So, but once you get consistent, it's just consistency too. So it's like if you do something for 1 month, you can't blame them, right?
Yeah.
You need to do something for at least like 3 months to see any sort of consistency, and then
Yeah.
know you need to be spending the amount to get those deals. Like that was my biggest thing that I didn't know when I was getting started. Is like you'd spend a little bit of money, and then I'd complain as to why I'm not getting deals. But when
Mm,
the data tells you that it costs 5 grand, 6 grand, 8 grand to get a deal, like how dare you complain?
yeah.
And so it's one of those things that you got to understand that as well. That has helped me, and I try not to get mad about that anymore. So it's like I understand now. It's like, okay, if you're spending 20 grand, only expect to get maybe 3 deals. Like
Yeah.
that's the math.
Yeah. For sure. So it wasn't any particular type of mailer you tried. It was just
No,
okay.
no, that one was just a blank. That was just a basic letter.
Yeah. Yep.
So like, hey, whatever the case is, but we've had some success with the check mailers, right? So like that's worked.
Yeah.
Um, from what I've seen though, like if you're just consistent with
Yeah.
it, I'll be honest with you. Like there was a guy I'm in Collective Genius, and it's a mastermind here, and so he's a big direct mail guy in Chicago, and
Mm,
he's like, yeah, here's my 7 figure a year direct mail piece. It was literally a 50-cent postcard that literally just had like a little paragraph on it. It was the most basic thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You've got to be kidding me. I'm over here trying to figure out exactly how to get this blank check, like what's the ARV on it, how to make it beautiful, this, that, and the other. He's like, yeah, here's what I sent. And he
Yeah.
crushes it. So
Yeah.
it's just consistency and volume with the direct mail game. That's my opinion. Um, and that was a good reminder for me. It's like I try to get too cute sometimes, you know, and it's just like
Yeah.
do the basics, do the basics.
Yeah. Just be out there. Yeah. I like
Just be
that.
out.
You want to talk a bit about like the dispo side and how you build that up in your business?
Yeah, sure, sure. That's a work in progress too. So, like I said, the whole like, hiring, switching, dispo, or switching from flipping to dispo, like that's been a big learning curve for me in the past year, right? So it's
Hmm.
like trying to figure those things out. Dispo for us, what works for us now?
Yeah.
We use Investor Lift.
Mm.
So I'm sure
Okay.
people are familiar with Investor Lift. It's almost like an off-market MLS, kind of thing. I guess that's the closest way to compare, like an off-market kind of database for buyers and other investors to look. So we paid for one of the tiers. I don't even know the name. Maybe it's Falcon tier or something, to where like you pay for buyers in your area. And so
Okay.
we try to curate and build relationships with those buyers. That's worked well for us. We send a lot of deals out on there. We still do Facebook groups.
Are you,
I've
are
had
you getting contact info for them when you're doing that, or is it just kind of have to
on
run through?
Investor
Do
Lift.
you get like a phone number?
Yeah, phone number and email.
Yeah, phone number and
So
email, like verified or
yeah, yep.
okay.
And like it'll show you a list of numbers, and then I think what will happen is if another investor's called them, like they can check next to that box as if like, okay, this is the right number. I think it's something like that.
Mm,
But nonetheless, what happens is you'll get inquiries. So once you send out emails and or
mhm.
text, you'll get inquiries about that property, and then that comes with their email and text as well. So you can call them up, right?
Got
So that's worked well for us. And that was one of those, like, I was like, listen, I have a buyer's list. It was about 1,000 people. I hadn't really like talked about it, talked to them in a while, so I hadn't built it up. And so I was like, if I want to get this rocking and rolling, I'd rather just pay to get to the point where we have some stuff going on. So
it.
I bought the little higher tier in Investor Lift. And so I added my 1,000 list to that. And so now I think we have like 10,000 buyers, 12,000 buyers, something like that.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you run into an issue though with that? Is blasting out that many people where just, people trying to go behind your back and take the deal and yada yada yada?
Yeah. So there's a couple of issues with Dispo and even Investor Lift, right? So it's like, yeah, that is something that does potentially happen.
Yeah.
Fortunately, knock on wood, it hasn't happened to us. And also too, like if someone tries to go around my back, like honestly, they're gonna fail probably because we build such good rapport and like we're super transparent.
Mm,
So it's like, you know, I can typically save it. Like it has tried to happen before, and I saved it all day just because they're like, I was fully transparent. The buyer thought we were trying to pull a fast one on them, and so they're like, oh, this is gonna be super easy. But we built good relationship with the seller, so the seller was like, yeah, no, I know what they're doing. Like I'm not gonna cancel. Like we know what's going on. So that was
yeah.
one thing. If I feel like if you have a good acquisition process and you're open and transparent, typically you can try to
So
negate
you're,
that.
are you talking about that with the seller? How you're gonna how you're gonna wholesale? Maybe not using the word wholesale because I don't know what that means, but maybe walk me through what that sounds like.
Yeah, so really, it comes down to one of two things. If I know it's a price that I can buy it at,
Yeah.
then we typically, which is what we try to do with everything, right? It's like I try to underwrite for me to be able to buy the property. So I tell them if it comes down to where we're going to wholesale, it's like, listen, we may bring in partners on this property. We may end up selling this property to some of our partners. It just really depends. We're not sure what our exit strategy is yet. And then it does depend on the property, right? So it's like once I look at it, once I see it, things like that, then we tell them. And then what we'll do is, we pretty much tell them, hey, listen, we need to see the property. We may bring in other partners to maybe sell to. Is that all right? And so like they kind of know at the end of the day what's going on.
Mm,
Same goes with innovations, right? It's like when we're listing it, they know exactly what's going on. You
yeah.
know, so people
Have
kind
to.
of are afraid. Exactly, people are a little
Have
afraid.
to.
Exactly,
Oh,
like if you try to pull a fast one on them, you're not going to get the deal done. So it's terrible. It's a terrible idea.
yeah.
We're not afraid of being honest because I think if you build good enough rapport and you solve their problem and they trust that you can solve their problem,
Mm,
then at the end of the day, they're going to be okay with that.
yeah. Yeah, we actually we do a couple novations, not that many, but our thing we literally tell sellers just so you know you're going to see it online for like more than we actually have it in contract with you because we're covering all the costs and obviously we're looking to make a profit here. And they're like, yeah, we don't care as long as we get our 110 or 112 or whatever we agreed on. I'm like, cool, just making sure you
Exactly.
know. Like,
Exactly. I love that. I love that line
yeah.
too, and that's what we start a lot of our conversations out with too. At the end of the day,
Mm,
I ask them one of the things that we have our acquisitions guys talk about. One of the first things they say, "Have you thought about listing with a realtor?"
mm,
And people are often scared to ask that question, but I love that question because
yeah.
then they'll quite literally tell me exactly why they want to sell to me.
Hmm.
And so what we do with that, it's like, okay, well, the only reason I ask if you want to list it with a realtor is just because, at the end of the day, if you're looking to get the absolute most for your house, I'd probably recommend you go that route. I say that all the time.
Hmm.
And then literally, once you get that out of the way, they're like, okay, this guy's being honest with me. Like he's telling me how it is. And it's the God's honest truth. And
Yeah.
so we tell them that. And then when we make an offer, I tell them, here's how it goes. Like they're going to take a look at the property, run the numbers, look at the comparables, take out realtor costs, take out closing costs, and then of course they want to make a profit, and then they come up with their number, and that's how they make an offer. And so I explain that as well.
Mm,
And so we're just open, like overly transparent, so that when anything comes up, if they see profit, if they see this, that, the other, like they know what's going on.
yeah. Yeah. That's I've always loved that line too. Like, what about just listing it and then they
They
tell you
tell
all the
you
reasons that
they tell you
they
the
don't want
exact
to.
reason why you're going to buy the house. Yeah,
Right. It builds a lot of trust too. I mean, because it's just the truth, right? I mean,
yeah,
you make
exactly,
more if you list it. Um,
exactly.
Talk about the innovations. Actually, are you doing a lot of those? Few of those?
Well, so we're doing a few. Like I said, we just talked about them right before I got on here today, which is awesome. But what we did when I first switched to doing more wholesale novation stuff, unfortunately, I jumped right into that boat way too soon. So what would happen
Mm,
is the cash conversion cycle on novations is longer. And so what I mean by that is from the moment you spend cash to get a lead, to closing takes a little bit longer because you have to list it on the MLS. So that's one of those things you got to keep in mind because when you're operating a company, you got monthly bills. But if it takes 60, 90 days to close these deals, you may not see that for a while. As opposed to
mm,
wholesale, you can see I can close a wholesale deal from lead to close in 14 to 21 days. So
mhm,
cash conversion there is quicker. So I screwed myself up at the beginning with just doing a bunch of innovations. Um, but now what do we do? We work with a realtor. They list it for us. I pay them
mhm,
1%, and they're trained. They handle all the stuff for us. We have a system there. But essentially, what we do as a company, we still offer our cash offer first.
mhm,
And I still firmly try to tell everyone, like, listen, you need to try to really go for the cash offer and don't just jump to novations right away because I had the problem
yeah.
especially with sales guys, right? It's like if you tell them that you can get it at this price with Novation, they're going to jump to that right away because they want to get the deal. But
Mm,
what you're doing is you're skipping over the good cash deals because you're not fighting for them a little bit more. So
mhm,
we try to optimize and push as hard as we can on the cash basis. So our cash number, which is obviously the lower number. And then from there, if I know that it won't make sense any other way, that's when we pitch novations.
mhm,
So we wait to try to get the novations. And then
mm,
from there, we try to set really, really proper expectations. Like this guy knows that we need to have open access. We need to be able to put a lockbox on the property. We need to be able to have 60 to 90 days for this thing to get closed potentially.
mhm,
'Cause that's a big thing. Access is a big thing. That was
mm,
a big thing that we're learning about,
yeah.
making sure that you set that expectation because oftentimes these people don't want to deal with, having people walk through their house. That was one of the reasons they went with an investor, quote unquote. So
Mhm.
letting them know exactly what's going to happen so that they're not caught off guard has been super helpful as well.
And then is your realtor handling communication with the seller too, or is that they're just kind of handling the potential buyers?
No, we do that. That's our TC. So once an
Okay.
acquisition gets it goes to TC.
Yeah.
I want to have as much control as I possibly can. And so
Mm,
like our team that's trained for that part, that needs to be where they're communicating between, I want the seller and our TC to communicate as much as possible. I don't want any other parties involved just because I want as much control as I can. Even
yeah.
though our realtor is trained and like, they're on our team, so like they know how to deal with all that stuff, it's easier because our transaction coordinator, like our process goes acquisition, then transaction coordinator for everything. So it's
Mm,
just easier to go about it that way.
yeah. Um, oh, so we were talking a little bit about the dispo side, and I kind of jumped to novations, but you were saying you guys put stuff out on Investor Lift, but like, what else have you kind of refined about your dispositions process?
Yeah. So a big thing is first and foremost, I try to underprice my wholesales.
Hmm.
And I try to almost because you want to create interest, right? Like that's a big thing. Oftentimes you don't have a ton of time. So I try to really get a lot of interest at the beginning, because what I'll see is like if you can get the interest, you'll get a little higher price because you can start genuinely, honestly saying to these people, "Hey, listen, I already have a price at that. Like, if you want the deal, you got to be here," because you'll get them emotionally attached, right? So we try
Mm,
to intentionally underprice our stuff because we want stuff to move.
hmm.
Especially in this market, like you got to have price stuff priced well. So that's the change we made, and then we try to get 3 offers on every house before we accept one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Easier said than done sometimes, full transparency, right? But that's what we really try to push for, is 3 offers on each property. And then what we've recently done is really try to push for, depending on the house, but like we try to set up a lot of showing times at once if it's
Mm,
owner occupied, because that's a big thing we run into, is just issues with showing the property. Because oftentimes they want to go with us because they don't have to have a bunch of these showings. So we
mm,
offer gift cards to the sellers. It's like, hey, here's a $50 Publix gift card. If you can go get some groceries while we show this house, or go get some food while we're doing this, just so we can deal with that in and of itself. That's been
mm,
helpful. And then building relationships too, like that compounds. You know who your good buyers are. You know who
mm.
get it done, and then kind of going from there. So you got to treat dispo like you treat acquisitions, though. So it's like you got to have someone on the phones all day, trying to build those relationships and really try to push hard.
Yeah. Are you going through and like calling people too, or are you kind of waiting to just kind of get stuff back once you send it out? Or
Yeah. So our dispo guy, like in free time, like he's supposed to be qualifying the list and qualifying the buyers list. So creating, a little bit more buy box criteria, like what they're looking to buy, where that stands. But what we've been doing recently, just because we've had enough deals to keep him busy, is he'll just go through and like consistently qualify all the inquiries. So it's like we have a bunch of
mm,
like inquiries from like Investor Lift or Facebook or whatever the case may be, our list. So it's like, qualify those, make sure you really see that, figure out what they're buying, and then try to just keep going from there.
what are you doing? Because to qualify people to before you like kind of let them go out to see the house on a wholesale deal, because there's just a bunch of people out there just like want to see something,
Kick
right?
and run. Yeah,
Yeah.
rock kickers for sure. So what we do is a couple things is, first off, that's still something we deal with today, right? Like
Yeah.
literally we had one where I thought we were going to get locked up yesterday. The guy sounded great. He saw the property, and then he doesn't want to sign. He doesn't want to send an EMD. He's like, oh, my hard money guy, this, that, and the other. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I always try to talk to them about like, yeah, it's terrible. I always try to talk to them like, okay, how are you buying this? Like, what's your financing look like? So if I hear some, well, uh, hard money, I'm like, okay, I got to dive deeper into that. What does that even mean?
Yeah.
Because everybody's definitions of, hard money, private money, cash, like they're all different. So we really try to figure out, okay, does this person have the means to be able to purchase this property? Maybe
Mm,
look at their past purchases. It's like, okay, are you an actual buyer? Um, and do you actually have like the money to close? And are you going to like, actually close on this thing? So really try to do some back end stuff there. Maybe look at their LLC, see what's going on there. Um, and then ask them, pretty much at the end of the day, we want to give them enough information to where pretty much they know when they're going out there, like, listen, you have all the information on the house, like you've seen everything, you've already ran your numbers. When you're going out there, like essentially this is the last step. We're going to expect an offer from you after this, and we're going to need it to be. It needs to be at this price. So if you don't want to do that, don't waste your time, kind of thing.
mm,
We try to really set the precedent there. Like I said, at the end of the day, it's easier said than done.
yeah.
But I don't. If we have a select amount of showings, we want to make sure that we're getting real deal people out there. So we don't want to just waste our
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. For sure. Cool, man. Well, we're kind of getting to the end here, but there's always two questions I like to ask. The first is, what is the craziest or most uncomfortable situation that you have ever experienced in a real estate deal?
Yeah, that one's good. So there was one time when I was going on an appointment with a landlord, with this rogue tenant, and it was in a not so good area, and she had schizophrenia, and she came out and peeked through the door. We were walking around the house because she wouldn't let us in, and then when I started to leave, and I would try to walk up to the house to go in the house, she ran at me like with a gun and was saying like,
Oh,
get off my house, get out of my, out of my house, you fill in the blank. And then, kind of started waving a gun at me, started saying she's going to shoot me. She said, I'm going to pop a cap in your head. Um, so that was fun. That was really fun. I didn't get the deal, which sucks, but
After
uh,
that,
that's unfortunate. But that's probably up there. Let's see here. I mean, man, I've had some good ones. I mean, yeah, there's been like, here's a good one. So I bought a house one time, and I was driving home from the gym. It was like 7:30 at night, and I get a call from Orlando Police Department, and they're like, "Hey, is this Cameron Moore?" I'm like, "Yes." They're like, "Do you own the property at 123 Main Street?" I'm like, "Yes." They're like, "Is anybody supposed to be in the house?" I'm like, "No." So some squatters broke in. Turns out one of the guys was FBI's most wanted,
oh,
and so I show up to the house, and there's like 40 cop cars, like drones everywhere, dogs out, like, and there's a stand up. Uh, they're inside, like the FBI's most wanted has guns, cops are outside, and they're in my house, of course. So that was awesome. That was really cool. Um, yeah, and so he actually got mad because he brought a prostitute in. He kicked the prostitute out because they didn't pay or something. And long story short, she called the cops. I'm like, okay, this is just fantastic. So that was a good one too. That was a good one.
that's up there. FBI's most wanted. That's the first time I've heard that one. I've heard a lot, but
That's
that's
pretty good.
good.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Huh?
Well,
I'm
not
proud,
good, but
proud of that
crazy.
one. Proud of that one.
Yeah, cool, man. And the last question I would always like to ask, if kind of for the newer people listening to the show, is if you could go back in time when you're looking for your first deal, give yourself one piece of advice, knowing what you know now, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I think having the mindset and the frame of like, okay, there's one thing and one thing that matters only, and it's literally like, how can I generate revenue? So
Mm,
talking to people, building, relationships with people, at the end of the day, like the hours that you're spending on this, like all of them need to be spent like either, finding deals of some sort. So like I would be focused with, okay, well, maybe what's the best way to find deals, or, what does my website look like? Or, do I have this in place? Like what's going to happen when I get the deal? And like, all those sort of things, like nothing else matters other than
mm,
just truthfully just focusing on either talking to people like sellers in and of themselves, or trying to spending your time finding deals, whether that be relationships, networking, but like all of your time needs to be spent on revenue generating activities. Nothing else matters. And the way in which you do that, like that can vary, obviously, depending on if you have
mm,
time, money, whatever the case is. But at the end of the day, you know, revenue is what counts, and that's what matters. So getting deals in and of itself, like spend your time just doing that work. Because I got too
mm,
carried away with other stuff. So
sure.
that's what I tell myself. Focus on that.
Yeah, great piece of advice. If people want to reach out to you after the show, maybe they have some deals for you, maybe they want you to come into their brokerage office and do a presentation. How can they go about reaching out to you?
Yeah, they can just shoot me a DM on Instagram. That's probably the easiest way. So underscore Cameron underscore Moore underscore something like that. So if you type in Cameron Moore, I'm sure I'll pop up. But yeah, shoot me a DM. Love to chat. Love to see if I can help out in any way.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.